Hello and welcome to It'll Be Alright in the 90s, the podcast that when called upon by the gaffer will always step up to record that high pressure episode to coincide with the Euros. I'm Alex McCoy Greenwood, and joining me is my co-host, Psycho Stu Joslin. Stu, are you enjoying the Euros?
From an England perspective, I'm probably along with the rest of the country. No, not so far, but I have faith. I have faith in the lads. Euro 2016, Portugal drew all three of their group games, qualified in third place into the second round in their group, and then went on to win the thing. So let's not panic just yet. That's my take on it.
Yes, that is going to sound pretty silly when we get knocked out on Sunday, which is 5 days before the episode gets released. So, yes, maybe we have to do that voiceover thing like in The Simpsons where Homer says the Denver Broncos. Is it the Denver Broncos he says behind his hand?
That's right. Yeah. All right, hold on. Let me just hang on. Let me just... Well, obviously, it was terrible to get knocked out by Slovakia on Sunday, and Gareth Southgate has now been rightly removed as England manager. And we'll have to see where we go from here. It's a terrible, terrible time for the national team.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely torrid state of affairs, that match. I can't believe there were 7 red cards. Have you ever seen anything like that?
That brawl at the end, where it was a 22-man, both benches as well. Yeah, absolutely awful. It's a stain on the game. It really is.
Right, I think we've got something there amongst all that we can edit together and make it sound accurate and save our blushes for any eventuality, basically.
Wonderful.
We are, of course, talking about the Euros because today's episode is very much on topic. We are talking about Euro 96, maybe the greatest Euros of our lifetime, I would say, maybe ever, if you're English at least. And Stu, I can't help but notice you are wearing the accurate England Euro 96 Umbro top there.
When we do these shows about various different tournaments, I always try and find a kit which is accurate to the time. And yet I've got the England home here with the Euro 96 and fair play arm patches as well. And I'm going to be speaking at length about this kit later on. It's certainly one of the greatest England shirts of the decade, if not of all time, I think.
Absolutely, yes. And we will be joined by a special returning guest to talk about that later. But before then, today's episode is sponsored by a company which I think is going to be very suitable for the time of year because it's Going Places. So one of our favourite holiday providers, Going Places here, have sent us in a fantastic offer for you, the listener. Quote the code AllRight90s to get 10% off the cost of their Torremolinos and Costa Brava packages, which can see you sweeping off to sun, surf and, well, who knows what else, on the Spanish and Mediterranean coastline this summer, and that's courtesy of today's sponsor, Going Places.
Great to have Going Places on board with their flagship branch in Emery Gate in Chippenham, of course. Believe it or not, I actually have a Going Places story for later on in the episode as part of our Euro 96 roundup, so this is very suitable indeed.
Spot on. Thank you very much to those guys at Going Places. We have, of course, been sponsored in the past by Lund Poly, but they've got a bit quiet on us this summer, hence why we had to look elsewhere. And thankfully, Going Places stepped into the breach there and helped us out.
I'm sure they're going to be around for a long time to come.
Time now for the bulletin board then. Stu, have you got anything over there?
I do. A couple of things. First of all, some correspondence from friend of the pod, Adam Taylor. You may remember on our Video Games of 1996 episode, I briefly mentioned that I thought I'd heard that he had been on one of the Sega buses at Sega World. And I messaged him after the podcast record to find out, and he messaged me back saying, yes, I did, mate. I went to the Games Master Roadshow type thing in Birmingham. There was a double-decker bus full of consoles playing Sonic the Hedgehog. From what I recall, I think the winner had to get the quickest time as well as the most points and coins. I think I got a T-shirt, cap, and possibly a certificate for my efforts. It was a very proud day. So there you go. That's first-hand experience from the Sega bus at the Games Master Roadshow in Birmingham. How about that?
That's fantastic. I love that sort of reportage from the field, from the decade itself. I wonder if he actually won. You know, he was like he won the T-shirt and the hat because he performed so well, or whether they just gave that to everyone. Because that's quite a feat to be that good on a game that so many people loved.
I think they'd probably be in a position to give everybody a certificate, wouldn't they? But a T-shirt and hat, I think, is the next step. So I'm thinking maybe he did outperform everybody else over a particular time frame, maybe the day or the hour, I don't know. But certainly good to hear that firsthand, as you say, reportage from one of the great Sega players of the decade, our friend Adam Taylor.
Maybe we should do a full episode with him.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I'll see if he's up for it. He'd probably want to do Bristol City in the 90s, though, as his main topic.
Okay, maybe not then.
Have you got anything over there?
Some news that is quite hot off the press. By our standards, it's very hot off the press because this is from a news story from just 10 days ago. And this is the relaunch of Cadbury's Top Deck, which is a chocolate bar that I don't remember at all. Apparently, it was first launched back in 1993, and it's returning to the shelves for a limited time and will be available in both price-marked packs and non-PMP formats. I don't know what that means. This is talkingretail.com, so I think they're using some lingo that's beyond me there.
Yeah.
Do you remember Top Deck?
I don't. It's another one that's passed me by as well. This is very rare that a 90s chocolate product would have got past us both. This is, and it's a Cadbury's one to boot as well. So yeah, this is definitely something that's going to have to be investigated. This isn't one of these weird ones. It's only going to be available in like Fauna Beyond teas for a week on Tuesday for 5 days or whatever, is it?
It does seem like it might be, yes. I mean, it's, what did they say? Oh, for a limited time. So yeah, goodness no. But to describe it, it looks like normal Cadbury's Dairy Milk on the bottom, and then on the top it's got their white chocolate. So it's kind of half and half white chocolate and milk chocolate, which seems like kind of an obvious idea, but I guess they've never done since. I can't think of anything. Was there a marble bar that was both combined or something like that?
There was, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, apparently it's returning as part of the brand's continued 200th anniversary celebrations and will feature vintage-inspired packaging from the original Top Deck in 1993. All of which is making me wish I wasn't vegan, because I'd be all over that for the packaging, if nothing else.
Well, I'll tell you what. If I spot one, I will buy it and try it, and then I will post you the packaging. How about that?
Oh, that would be fantastic.
And then we got both areas covered then, haven't we?
Yes, yeah. Please do. Have you got anything else?
I do. I've got a couple of things. First of all, our regular listener and sometime contributor Steve Robbs has sent us in a link. This is to a website called timeextension.com, and the article is titled Super Sega Console will play Mega Drive, Master System, Saturn and Dreamcast games. A team of Spanish Sega fans are looking to build the ultimate Sega console capable of running Mega Drive, Master System, Saturn and Dreamcast games. The Super Sega will use, and then it tells you all about the sort of chips and things that it'll have and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity. A more interesting aspect is that 8 joystick ports will be included, allowing Sega fans to use their original controllers. But this is very much in the prototype stage at the moment. There's no crowdfunder at the moment. They want to make sure that everything works before they sort of bring it out to market. So something to look out for there. A possible Super Sega console coming out onto the market that will be able to play all of your old Sega games from Mega Drive to Dreamcast. How about that?
Oh, that's fantastic. That would be a really great product if they do manage to get that to market, because it's one of the problems, isn't it, that you have to have all the different consoles over the years to be able to play all the games that you've loved. I know this is an issue in your household where you're constantly digging out old consoles and putting them in your living room. Whereas, if you could just have one that had everything, it would be fantastic.
Absolutely. We'll keep an eye on that, and we'll report back if anything more concrete comes out on that in future. I've got one more thing here, which is possibly the most important thing that I'd like to mention in the postbag and bulletin board slot tonight, and that is It Will Be Alright in the 90s 1, North Wiltshire District Council 0. My parking offence was cancelled. I want to thank Jeff. I want to thank yourself, Alex, for turning up in court to support me. I want to thank everybody who sent in messages of support. We didn't back down. We saw it through to the end. And in the end, we got the victory and the justice we deserved. So thanks all. And keep on trucking out there, everyone.
Oh, fantastic. I thought it was a very moving speech you made on the steps of the courthouse, I should say, after that. With all the cameras there and everything, I thought you did really well under pressure. And I'm glad that I put my suit on, actually, because I hadn't realised quite how much of a media presence there was going to be. But justice for the Pewsham one, I'll say on that.
Absolutely.
It was a massive relief.
Although looking back, maybe I shouldn't have started my speech with, now I'm not on trial here today, because I was on trial. And also they didn't, and I tried to insist on this for the 90s touch. I wanted to be led into the court with only my cuffed hands visible underneath a grey blanket as they led me in. But they said that they couldn't do that. The cutbacks, apparently, there aren't any blankets anymore. So I just had to walk in there. But there you go. Like I say, justice has been done. And a proud moment for myself and for the podcast. So thanks everyone.
Yeah, keep your eyes open for the crowdfunder. We'll be starting to pay for the legal fees. Unfortunately, have saddled us with a fair amount of debt, but
hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Yeah, we should never have hired that that extra lawyer, should we? I think Jeff alone would have been enough. But
I'm thinking after the emotional response to it on the last episode, I'm thinking of bringing back some sort of mobile mini market. In order to sort of work in the evenings and earn some extra money to pay off the legal bills. So look out for that. Look out for the return of the mini market in the Pewsham area soon.
And one final thing on the bulletin board, I just want to thank Pop Culture Reflections podcast, who gave us a nice shout out on Twitter. So go and check out their podcast. I noticed their most recent episode is on Speed, one of the greatest action films of the 90s, as discussed on our previous film episode, I believe. So go and check them out, and thanks a lot for the shout out.
Time now for What's the Most 90s. We're quite simply sawing things in half in front of the audience tonight, as I ask Alex who the most 90s magician is.
This wasn't easy for me compared to some of the previous ones of this we've done recently, like Sound, where there were loads of things came to my head. This was a bit more of a challenge. I finally plumped for Siegfried and Roy, who I think you could arguably be said were quite 80s as well, maybe even a bit earlier. But I sort of associate them with that big, ostentatious Vegas, big money thing that was maybe a little bit more early 90s than 80s. They headlined the Mirage Casino. I think they had a residency there for most of the 90s until Roy had a disagreement with the White Tiger, which didn't turn out so well for Roy.
An unfortunate misunderstanding with the White Tiger.
Yes, exactly. They were, of course, parodied in The Simpsons as Gunther and Ernst, appearing in one of the episodes, and another case of The Simpsons predicting the future there, because they were both mauled by a White Tiger in that episode. And I've never seen any of their shows at all, so I can't say exactly what their magic was like, if they were any good, but that's why I've chosen them, basically, for that connection to the decade and The Simpsons.
Okay, what I will say straight off the bat is this appears to be the What's the Most 90s that you are least interested in the entire time we've been doing this.
It's the one that I struggle with the most. It was interesting because I'm fascinated to know what you've chosen. It came out of left field for me, I'll be honest, but you never know what you're going to get with What's the Most 90s, do you? So
you don't, indeed. Indeed.
I played the what's the phrase? I played what was the cards that were dealt me.
And very apt as well for being a magician based What's the Most 90s.
Of course, yeah, an ace up my sleeve.
So for my choice, do you remember a little while ago I gave you an update on a clip from Breakfast TV of Status Quo and the Beach Boys playing together that had been stuck in my mind for many years, and then I eventually tracked it down?
Yes.
So this comes from a similar sort of thing. This is a clip that's been wedged in my mind for a long, long time. And again, in the research for this, in the last few days, I've actually managed to track this down again. I've gone for a magician called Paul Zenon. Is that a familiar name to you?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, very present on TV in the 90s and 2000s, I would say. Still probably best known today for doing a bit on Dictionary Corner in Countdown now and again. I think, actually, that Paul might be a friend of a good friend of the pod, Will Hodgson. I think they may well have moved in the same sort of entertainment circles around those times. So you never know, maybe through Will, we might be able to ask if Paul will come on after this mention of him on the pod. We never know. But I used to love a little bit of magic in the 90s and early 2000s, particularly sort of 1 hour specials that you don't really see anymore. So if Paul Zenon had a 1 hour special on Channel 4, I would watch it. And another one that I liked for some bizarre reason, I don't know, I didn't miss a show of his for a long time when I was between the ages of like 8 and 11, was the hypnotist Paul McKenna. He
Of
used to
course.
have hour-long specials on ITV all the time, and I used to love it when he would get people out of the crowd and hypnotise them and make them do things or make them forget things and that sort of thing. I know not why I'm no longer interested in that sort of thing, really. And I used to watch programs like Channel 4 did a series called The 100 Greatest, and they did 100 Greatest Magic Tricks. And this might be where this clip comes from that I managed to find, which is actually a trick that goes wrong. So it's Paul Zennon in a bar in Glasgow, and there's actually a chap in the shot with a Celtic shirt on, one of the Umbro-sponsored Celtic shirts, if you can picture that. And it's a trick where he's got a full pint. He puts a beer mat on the top of the pint, tips it over, holds it over the guy's head, takes his hand away and the beer mat's still there. Then he pulls the beer mat away and the liquid stays in the glass. Except on this occasion, it doesn't stay in the glass. And it stays in there for 2-3 seconds, and then it comes out and drenches the guy. And as Paul himself says in the clip, what makes it worse is that it was a pint of cider as well. So it's very, very sticky. And the way that it's resolved basically is that the fella then just tips his drink over Paul Zennon, and it's all resolved in a quite friendly way. Another thing I didn't know about Paul was that he was actually the co-creator and writer of a very, very poorly received game show on CITV called Crazy Cottage from about 1996, hosted by Rick Adams and then latterly Jez Edwards, two stalwarts of children's ITV in that period. And the concept of the show was that everything was backwards. So the show would begin and they would say, "Thanks for playing and goodbye this time from Crazy Cottage," and then they would start with round 5, and then they would work all the way back to round 1. And that was a Paul Zennon creation. So just for really being the most present magician that I watched in the 90s, and also having had a hand in a TV show that I used to watch on children's ITV as well, which I didn't know about until now, I've gone for Paul Zennon. And also he's a friend of a pod, so that can't be bad.
Fantastic choice. And it's good to be introduced to someone who I wasn't really aware of. I think if for no other reason than enthusiasm and knowledge, then it has to be Paul Zennon rather than Siegfried and Roy. And I don't imagine Paul Zennon had a questionable relationship with the way he treated animals either. So I feel more comfortable putting him in than Siegfried and Roy.
I would have been absolutely furious if you tried to put Siegfried and Roy in after all that.
Joining us today is a returning guest. He's the editor of Kick Magazine, host of both football podcast Alive and Kicking and WWE podcast Gorilla Position. He's a sports writer for the Mail and DAZN, as well as maybe being the country's biggest QPR fan. It's a delight to welcome back to the podcast, Ash Rose. Hi, Ash. How's it going?
Good. I'm good. Thank you for having me on. I don't want to take the mantle of biggest QPR fan because I'm sure there's more out there. But thank you very much. But yeah, looking forward to this.
You might not be the biggest QPR fan in the country, but you're definitely the biggest QPR fan we've ever had on the pod. So there's some tile.
Sure.
So yes, as we mentioned at the start of the episode, we are in the midst of Euro 2024. So what better time than now to talk about probably the greatest Euros ever if you're an England fan, but we'll talk about that, I guess, in the course of the next hour or so. But I do want to quickly ask about the current tournament, though. What do you think of the England kit this tournament?
I'm quite a fan. I don't think Nike have done the best job with the England kit since they took over the contract. We're a 90s podcast, so Umbro is always going to be close to our hearts, isn't it, for definite? I'd probably say this is their best effort, Nike's, the home kit. It's a traditional, the navy shorts is always a tick in my box. It's got some kind of very small elements of 90 kit, like the collar, the navy. If you squint a bit, it looks a bit 1990. So I do like the. It's one of the better Nike ones. My favourite England kit of all time is the classic 92 third kit that had the 3 massive lions across the front of it. Yeah. I think we only wore it maybe twice. I think we only ever wore it. But that's never been beaten. So I always go to that. But I think overall they're a pretty decent set of kits, I think I'd say.
I mean, for me, I'll just add in a little bit about the goalkeeper kits, as you might expect me to do at this specific moment in time. I'm quite a fan of the goalkeeper kit design. I have to say, it's a nice little orange number that the Jordan's been wearing so far. I'd give the goalkeeper kit a solid 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree with you both. I think it's probably my favourite Nike England kit. And I asked actually because I think it looks like it's a reference or an homage to the Italian 90 kit.
Yeah.
And I wondered if I wanted to know if you both thought that was what they were doing intentionally. But obviously, Ash, we've talked about Italian 90, so it seems relevant. And yeah, the Goldie kits as well are really good. So I've started off the episode by breaking all the rules and talking about something outside of the 90s. So let's get back on track. What about? Let's just start with the personal memories. Like, what did the Euro '96 mean to you guys?
It's a lot. I mean, I always say that there was something. The summer of 1996, unless you lived it, I don't think you can kind of explain it. It kind of felt like if you bottled it up, it was such a nice summer, and the zeitgeist of the country at the time just felt very different, very happy. Like the music was brilliant. You know, Britpop was at its very high at the time. You had Oasis and Blur rivalry going on. You had the Spice Girls breaking out, and we hadn't really seen something like that before. New Labour were coming in, which, you know, what happened afterwards is neither here or there. But at the time, it felt like the country was on this massive change. And then slap bang in the middle of it, you had this tournament when it felt like the hottest summer, and every day sunshine. I'm sure it wasn't, but at the time, that's what it felt like. It always felt like it. Like when I look back, I feel like it was a great summer. It was a hot summer, and in the middle of this England team, which I think is the most well-liked England team. I think it had a lot of players that were very much. It's kind of before we got to the kind of disconnect with some of the England teams in the next decade. I think that 96 team was very much a mix of a connection between the early 90s, where football was still kind of a bit more connected to the fans before it started to make the massive change in the mid 90s. And I think that England team really is well loved by everyone. A great kit as well, as Stu, you're wearing a classic England kit. And it just, yeah, it's always a summer that I look back on and think it's probably the best year of the 90s in if you bottled it all up. And at the centerpiece of this was this tournament that was obviously in this country as well. So I feel like we got the vibe from all the fans being in this country. I went to a couple of games, and you felt that, you know, the different cosmopolitan, different fans in every pocket of the UK. And it just brought I think it's one of those tournaments that definitely brought the country together. Like, I have a really abiding memory of the Spain after the Spain game, which is, no spoilers alert here. I'm sure we all know what how the flowed. But so I was sort of early teens at that point during Euro '96, not quite old enough to be drinking, but old enough to be swept up in everything. And I remember after the Spain game watching it with my dad, and then we went and got a McDonald's in the local high street, which was called Welling. And as we drove into the high street, there used to be two pubs on each corner, and they historically were rivals. I never knew because I wasn't old enough at that point, but they didn't meet or commute to each other. There was a bit of banter, but not very nice banter towards them. There was a bit of a rivalry. But for that Saturday, I think it was a Saturday, everyone was in the streets celebrating, singing Free Lions. And I got out, I was on my sunroof in my dad's car. We're all singing Football's Coming Home. I hadn't seen anything like it from a kind of country point of view. And that was the feeling. I think everybody just was so enthralled with that England team and with that soundtrack of Baddiel and Skinner. It really won. And we all thought we were going to do it. And we'll get to the nears and the falls of it. But that's always my first personal abiding memory of the feeling of 96 and that moment after the Spain game of seeing this high street basically stopped like it was a parade. And we'd only got past the quarterfinals at that point. So I've rambled a bit there, sorry, but that is kind of my first kind of abiding memories of Euro 96.
Well, first of all, we're talking about spoilers. I haven't actually looked at any of the results for the tournament yet. I'm saving that for another time. So please, if you could, just avoid that. That would be great. So Euro 96 for me, it's the first tournament that I really sort of knew was happening. So I would have been 7, I think, in the summer of 96. France 98 really is the first tournament where I was really into it, and I absorbed all of it and took in as much as I could. But Euro 96 I knew was happening. And again, I can go back to the Spain game, which is the one that I've got down here as my main memory. And you're right, Ash, it was a Saturday the 22nd of June, 1996. So we've just gone past the 28th anniversary of that game as we sit here, which doesn't seem right, does it?
That seems scary.
And this is the one that goes back to Ash. You won't know this, but our episode tonight is sponsored by Going Places, our friendly neighbourhood travel agent. And on the afternoon that this game was played, myself, my mum, and my dad were at my gran and granddad's house. They'd got like the master brochure from Going Places that morning, and they were going through the master brochure looking for where they were going to go in August, where we were going to go on holiday. So my mum and my nan were doing that. My dad, granddad, and myself were watching the game, and I remember my dad having to go out in the garden for the penalty shootout. He couldn't bear it. And that is that's my main memory of that day. And also again a little link to my granddad. He sent away for a little Euro 96 double-decker bus for me out of the paper.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, what? It's like that.
You've got that's superb.
It's bad audio, but it was kind of, yeah, it's like a little bit like that.
Yeah, that's it. I think the one I had was like, it was a double-decker bus, and it had like the city written on the side.
Yeah,
same sort of thing.
Set,
yeah. And there is currently one on eBay for £4, which I am watching, so I will keep updated on that. But yeah, that's Euro 96 for me, memory-wise.
Yeah, kind of similar for me. Very much an idyllic summer from what I remember, just generally, like weather-wise and music. And like you say, Ash, it was like the height of British music revival, really. And like so much optimism around the culture and the politics and everything. And the tournament just couldn't have been more perfect for that, really. And the fact that it was in Britain as well. Well, in England, I should say. So just, yeah, really positive. I suppose Italia 90 was kind of where English football was being sort of rehabilitated, wasn't it? It was on its way back from the dark days of the 80s, and people were starting to forgive English football fans a little bit. And then Euro 96 seems like this sort of triumphant homecoming where it was like finally properly something to be celebrated, and like we could all get involved, and there wasn't this spectre of hooliganism. I can't remember if there was much trouble. That's something I associate a bit more with maybe France 98. Do either of you remember there being any issue with that?
Well, only the players pre
Oh yeah, of course.
Famous night out in Hong Kong, which led to obviously the dentist chair celebration against Scotland. But no, I don't recall anything major. I think maybe as well it was because it was in England. I think when you get the fans that go abroad and you get that mixture of being in a foreign country, the foreign authorities not always being as understand is probably the wrong word, but there's always kind of a clash, and I think things get out of hand. Not always to completely England fans' fault, but I think because it was in our country, maybe people knew how to handle certain situations better than maybe some of the tournaments. But it's not something I recall. I think maybe in the semi-final after we lost, there was some trouble in London, I think during Trafalgar Square, but that's only kind of a very sort of ringing a very slight bell, but nothing major, I don't think.
So yeah, I remember just watching it all with my family. Something I've continued to do to this day. I've watched a lot of this current tournament with my family. I think it was the first tournament I have a personal sort of memory of, a proper memory that England were in. I sort of vaguely remembered Italia 90. Obviously, we weren't at 94. I have no memory at all of Euro 92. It just seems like a tournament that didn't exist in my
It's
world.
probably for the best, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard bad things about it.
I call that the forgotten tournament. I think other than Denmark winning, I think everyone just goes, oh yeah, Euro 92. Yeah, I mean, England were probably as bad as they've ever been, bar Andy Sinton, who was the QPR representative, who did his best there. Yeah, it's not although it's the first sticker book I really always remember, Euro 92, which is a shame that that's the first one I remember collecting. But yeah, it's not a well-remembered tournament for sure.
Yeah, was that where Lineker made his last appearance? Was that the yellow or the substitution and all that sort of stuff?
He was one goal away from equaling Bobby Charlton's, and we were drawing with Sweden at the time, and Taylor took him off. with half an hour's play for Alan Smudger Smith, and that was Lineker's nadir of his England career.
We'll get to other memories, I suppose, as we go on. But personal connection. I loved it. Loved it all. Great summer. Shall we talk about the teams and the players? And does anyone stand out here from the list of teams here? There isn't any major omissions that I can see. I don't know about you guys. I suppose Sweden were coming off the back of. Did they get to the semis of World Cup '94? They did really well, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, and they're not here. That's kind of a surprise, I suppose. They're not obviously such a big team now, but you've got all the other big teams. You've got Italy, France, Spain, Germany, of course.
I mean, it was it was quite. I think it was viewed as quite an open tournament at the time because a lot of the European teams did really well in USA '94. Not obviously England didn't because they weren't there. You mentioned Sweden who didn't qualify, but you had the likes of Bulgaria and Romania, but it was quite open. I don't think there was an out and out heavyweight at the time, but I think there was some hope with England. There was already trepidation with what happened in Hong Kong, and for anyone who's lived under a rock during this era, they were famously photographed on a pre-tournament tour of Hong Kong, having a few drinks and drinking out in the dentist chair, throwing tequila back in Gazza's net and all that. So there was a bit of a backlash, and then they trashed the plane as well. So, I mean, England as a team were kind of expected to do well, but the fans were a little bit on the wall. Mainly the press weren't happy with their antics. I think Holland were the big team that people expected because they still had that great team that stopped England qualifying for '94 with likes of Bergkamp and Seedorf and Davids but it was also a tournament where we saw teams come out of nowhere, like the Croatia team and the Czech Republic team that got to the final, who weren't expected to do as well as they did. And I think we probably said this when I was on the before until about 1990. It's one of those, possibly one of the last tournaments as well, where you get the random stars come out that you've never heard of before. Because we live in a day and age now. If we're watching the tournament in 2024, we pretty much know everyone who's playing in that, even the Georgian team that have done really well. You kind of pick out a couple of players, but it wasn't like that in the 90s. So this Croatian team and Czech Republic, when you got players like Karel Boborski, who stood out obviously for the Czech Republic, and then Croatia, who I absolutely fell in love with because of Davor Suker, who's still one of my absolute favourite all-time players. He was absolutely phenomenal in this tournament, and then went on to France '98 to win the Golden Boot. But the checkered kit, having Suker and Boban, Prosinecki and Slimac, they're a really good team to watch, and they stunned Denmark and the great Peter Schmeichel as well, the classic chip from Suker. Yeah, so Croatia were a team I really, really liked watching in that tournament.
Croatia this time round for Euro 24, they've sort of gone with oblong.
It's not quite. Yeah,
it's not good enough, is it?
No.
Just a little aside there, bringing us back to the present day.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
I've picked out a few individuals that I'd like to discuss. First of all, when I was looking at the squad list, I decided to pick out who the youngest and oldest players at the tournament were. And these have actually both come from the home nations, from England and Scotland. So I don't know if you've got any ideas as to who they might be.
The youngest must be an English player then, I would assume.
Correct.
So who was in that?
Was it like Gary? Was it Neville or because this was early for him, right?
It was. I mean, I might have to give you half a point. It was Phil Neville. Phil Neville was in the squad at 19 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy.
So who was the oldest? Was it the keeper? I can't think who that was. Magilton or something.
It would be Andy Gorham, but I don't know if that was that the oldest player. I'm not sure.
The oldest player was a Scottish goalkeeper. It was Jim Leighton.
Was Jim Leighton?
Jim Leighton, yeah.
Indeed, who was in the squad, who was 37 at the time. I think you probably get younger. Well, you certainly get younger players than 19, and you probably get older players than 37 these days, don't you? In tournaments over the course of the whole thing, when you take everybody into account. So, another player I just wanted to mention briefly is the Dutch centre half Johan de Koch, who was playing for Roda JC at the time, and I'm not mentioning him to laugh at his name. Far from it. I'm mentioning him because he was part-time at the time of Euro 96 because he was employed as a civil engineer. He was a part-time world-class footballer.
Not a bad part-time job, is it?
And then while he saw out his career with Schalke in Germany, and while he was playing for Schalke, he was involved in designing the stadium that they play in today. So there you go. That's
good fact.
That's Johan de Kock for you.
That's a great fact. Yeah, that is.
We should, of course, say this was the last tournament that Gaza played in. There was some controversy around his selection for 98, I think, in the issue with Glenn Hoddle. But this was, I mean, I guess his finest moment in an England shirt. I would say the Scotland match, maybe, and the tournament as a whole. What about the key fixtures? I think there's some pretty obvious ones that are going to stand out here.
Well, apart from the England-Spain in the quarterfinal, which is the one, of course, I really remember, we've alluded to the dentist chair celebration, so it has to be England-Scotland, the old enemy battle at Wembley. But it has to be one of the most iconic matches of the tournament because of obviously what had gone before, and then Gaza being dragged off in the first game against Switzerland and not having been effective. And then coming through, the flick over Colin Hendry's head, the finish past Andy Gorham. And then this is one of the first little bits I wanted to show you tonight. Got the old yellow fair play bottle here from the celebration, which is wheeled out from time to time on the five-a-side pitch. Nobody ever asked me about it, which I think is an absolute shambles, but there you go. And it's just one of those iconic, enduring images of the tournament, isn't it? With the players, I think it's Sheringham and McManaman sort of crouched over Gaza as they spray the water into his mouth from the bottle and mimic the dentist chair. So yeah, it has to be that. Rod Stewart in the crowd, of course, who is somebody I'm actually going to come back to later if I get the chance. But yeah, and I think this is also the first game where Three Lions is played in the stadium after the game, and it really then becomes the song of the tournament. I think it was the PA announcer inside Wembley just sort of decided to do it on a whim, and it really caught on around the stadium after that 2-0 win, and then went on from there. So yeah, England-Scotland for me in the group is probably my most notable fixture. Yeah,
that was. I mean, yeah, the penalty save from Seaman off his elbow, Gaz's goal
of course.
Celebration.
Did Yuri Geller move the ball? Did he move the ball?
Did. Well, someone did.
It was all like, yeah, it was like Yuri Geller.
Was he in a helicopter above or something? Where have I got the helicopter idea from?
Yeah, I remember at the time happening, he was above in a helicopter, and the ball does move, but there are, it's a 90s Wembley pitch. There are divots. There is a wind. I'm not sure the spoon bending mind tricks of Yuri Geller was quite correct for that, but it was a great save, because how often do you see a penalty off an elbow? It was a great save by Seaman, who was by far away the best goalkeeper at the tournament as well. He had an absolute storming tournament.
And here's Gascoigne. Brilliant play! Oh! Take a bow for that! That's unbelievable! And in a minute, it's all gone England's way. Seaman at one end, Gascoigne at the other.
Ash, what games stand out for you?
I mean, it'd be interesting to talk to someone who isn't English about Euro 96, because I think there's so much as an England fan centered around that group and the games and their journey during the tournament. I don't know how this is viewed, how the tournament's viewed on the continent by other countries. It'd be really interesting to know that, because for me, obviously the big standout games, the Scotland game, as Stu said, definitely the Holland game. To this day, I don't think I've seen England play better. I just think everything just seemed to click that night. Sheeran showing them all their absolute deadliest. Gaza just, running through the Dutch defence. Again, this Dutch team were heavily fancied at the start. This weren't a Dutch team in decline or anything like that. These were the cream of the crop, these were. We even let Kluivert score so that Scotland wouldn't get through as well. We were kind of that. It was a very, very special night. I remember watching that with my best friend in my room, and we were just it was by the fourth one in, you're almost laughing, like, what is going on? Like, we were like 4-0 up, because we stuttered, in the tournament at the beginning, bring it back to 2024, because we always do at the group stage. That is an England hallmark. The Switzerland game is a horrible game of football to watch, really. Shearer getting the goal, his first goal in 16 matches, and kind of rectifying that worry before the tournament that he hadn't scored, and Venable stuck with him as well. So, but that Holland game is, I could watch that over and over again. And it only dawned on me actually this week that we hadn't played Holland in a major tournament since 1996, which is kind of crazy when you think of all the tournaments that have been, and both teams are usually in them as well. So yeah, definitely the Holland game. Stuart Pearce's celebration as well in the Spain game we mentioned as well. We have to say that because that's iconic. His that redemption of him stepping up, because we're all the same. I remember Pearce stepping up and you're like, please don't miss again. Please don't miss again. And he scores and lets out for these 6 years of pent-up emotion from that night in Turin. Although I actually like his celebration when he scores against Germany as well, because having done the one where it's like, I've done it, he kind of just looks at the camera with a little kind of half cheeky smile. So yeah, it's fine. I'm going to score them all now. And I mean, Stuart Pearce is brilliant. But yeah, if I had to pick one, it'd be the Holland game for sure, because that's a stunning performance from England.
I just want to quickly talk about the penalties against Spain, because am I right in thinking this was the second penalty shootout, only the second penalty shootout we'd ever had? Because I think Italia 90 was the first one, right? Or at least in a proper tournament.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it would have been the second one, because we obviously didn't have one in 92, 94, we weren't there. So yeah, it would have been the second one in a major tournament for sure.
Yeah, and it's sort of weird to think that we had this. I sort of remember starting to support England and straight away thinking we lose at penalty shootouts, like it's a thing.
Yeah.
But that was only based on Italia 90. It was based on that one penalty shootout, but it was like already this thing around our neck, this ball and chain that was kind of dragging us down. And then we won the second one. So we had a 50-50 record, or a 1-1 record with penalty shootouts after that.
Yeah.
And we all know
it all went
how
a bit down.
That went. It did a little bit, yeah. Only recently started to be rectified. Yeah, I hadn't really occurred to me until I'm researching this episode that we were doing okay on penalty shootouts until years after this. But I do think we have to talk about England-Germany, because we've each picked a different England match. But England-Germany, no one's actually mentioned. Like it's the elephant in the room, isn't it?
Well, for the neutral, it was a great game, and often the England ones are. When you think of France '98, the best game of that tournament was England-Argentina. Like we do have the drama seems to follow England, especially in this era. And I mean, there's so much to talk about from this game. Taking the lead early on, I remember that, and being like, "This is it. We're going to do it. We're going to beat Germany." 3 minutes in, Shearer's header at the near post, letting them back in. Stefan Kuntz scoring, and then the two chances in extra time where Darren Anderson hit the post, and then to this day, like I still think Gazza's going to get to that ball.
Yeah,
like he's literally
same here.
like a stud away. And it's funny, like when I play five-side football, if someone misses a chance like that, it's still referred to. It's like, oh, he's done a Gazza at 96. Like everyone, it's still the go-to memory of like because if you watch it back, he half hesitates just as I think Copper gets it. He thinks the goal is going to get there, and that half hesitation just stops him. And Cook, because of, at least we remember, it was golden goal as well at the time this tournament was under. So if that had gone in, the game would have ended and we would have got through to the final.
Trying to get Shearer on the far side, onto the volley. No! Gascoigne went flying in there, and it looked as though it did need just the merest touch.
So yeah, I mean, it was a great game for a neutral, but a heartbreaking end that, Southgate's never really got shaken off that, even if what he's done subsequently as a manager, that image of Southgate with his hands on his head and in that horrible grey kit. I was never a fan of that kit. It's never escaped you.
There's something about it being him as well, isn't it? It's not like when Baggio missed in '94. That's obviously iconic in its own way, but it's iconic for a different reason. Whereas the image of Baggio is this incredible striker, the best in the world at the time, and it's this sort of great tragedy. With Southgate, it's like it was kind of obvious it was going to miss. It never felt right. Like, I don't know what other players should have stepped up, shouldn't there? It shouldn't really have been put on Southgate, but I guess he's the sort of guy that was going to stand up and say, "Yeah, I'll take it." And
his immediate commentary is, "Oh no!" That is the line from Barry Davies, as it's saying, and still hear it in my head every time. And I was sitting in my room. I remember just slumping, going, "That's it, we're done." And Andres Muller stepped up to score the winning penalty and did that horrible chest out celebration. Really fast, which just, at the time it was like, arrogant Germans, how dare they? but that's the penalty lottery. Someone's got to miss.
Talking of the grey kit that none of us like, well, I assume you don't like it, Stu. We'll get to it, but we should talk about the kits of the tournament. Well, let's start with the England kits, actually, because, we just talked about the grey kit, and Stu, you are wearing the home kit. What do we think of the England kits?
Is this the best England home shirt of all time?
No, that's Italia 90.
Ooh, controversial.
And there's a debate
It's
to be
one
had
of
there, isn't there?
Yeah, they're the top two. I think. I don't think you can.
Yeah.
The France '98 one. It's okay, but I think home kit wise, it's out of those two for sure. I mean, well, I remember when it was released and you had this random flash of light blue. I don't really know wherever that came from, but it worked. It didn't work on the last Nike kit, but it worked in '96.
Yeah, I do think it's at least the second best. Do you think that Nike kit, which I think was from 2022 or something like that, was that an homage to this kit? I kind of thought it was, just because of the light blue.
Yeah, it was never actually said, like you say about the current one, that they haven't actually outright said that that's a homage to 90. But it must be, because it's the only time we've ever used that blue was on the 96 kit, and to bring it back was a bit random, and not to mention it. But then wasn't the away kit that really similar looking 90 kit to the red one they had? Because even the collar had the fake Umbro as well.
Yeah.
Really said that, because that was clearly a homage to the 1991, which I didn't understand, because if it's not Umbro, then I don't know what you're doing. Like, I'm not a fan I'm not a fan of the score draw England kits that don't have Umbro on them, that have the lines instead. I kind of cringe when I see those, because you either have the Umbro kit or you don't. I'm not for the for the kind of retro remakes, and that's what that kind of felt like. So yeah, but it did seem odd that they never really outright said that this is a nod to 1996, because that would surely be a selling point as well.
Yeah, that seems to be happening quite a lot, that there'll be references to old kits, but they're never actually explicitly admitted or said. I guess maybe partly because they're made by different manufacturers, so I don't know. But Stu, what do you think of the grey kit?
The grey kit, I don't know. I've never really thought about it too much, I have to say. It's just that it's always been associated with that game, hasn't it? Is that the only time it was ever worn?
I remember I think David Beckham made his debut in that kit, because I think it was the qualifying campaign the next season. I want to say we were away to like Moldova or someone like that.
Right, okay.
There's a picture of Beckham in that. I'm sure it's his debut. So I think we may have won it in that qualification campaign, but I would say maybe a handful at times at most. Okay,
righto. Well, what I actually wanted to talk about, if I could, if we can't agree that this shirt is, whether or not this shirt is the best of all time in terms of England shirts, I think what we can agree on is that the arm patches that we used in the tournament are the best arm patches of any tournament ever.
Yeah, agreed.
It's a great logo.
It really is, yeah.
It instantly hits you as well. There's something about it that you just look at it, and I mean, it was everywhere, because that's what also another memory I have of Euro 96. Like, the merchandise was everywhere, because it was in this country as well. And I think everywhere you turn, every news agent you went in, every kind of toy shop you went in, or like McDonald's doing their Happy Meals, or they just seemed to be like, that logo was everywhere, and they did a really good job on the branding and stuff. And you're right, I think because they're circle as well and they match, I think they are you're right, it's a perfect sleeve sponsor from the tournament wise.
Absolutely. Well, what I wanted to mention really about these was that if you look closely at the Bulgaria and Denmark home shirts from this tournament, with regards to the placement of the arm patches, they've actually got the patches sort of on the opposite side of the sleeve, because they didn't want to obscure the manufacturers' logos. The Hummel and Puma shirts, they were obviously had the distinctive chevrons, and Puma had something similar for that tournament. So they went for a sort of rather odd placing of the arm patches, which was something that caught my eye while I was looking back at the kits.
That's exactly the sort of keen eye that we rely on from you, Stu, in this podcast.
Yeah.
I don't bring a lot. This is what I bring.
You've got to mention the England goalie kits though, because the home one was jazzy enough, but the away one, which is I affectionately known as the refreshers kit, as I remember it, I think that was the last literal full kit I bought because I absolutely loved it. I thought it was mental in the best possible way. And I remember going shopping with my friends down our local high street, and I full on had the shirt, the shorts, the socks, which were hoop in those colours as well, in the crazy purple, green, red, yellow, psychedelic, pure 90s. It's a shame that kit's again associated with that night, because I think that's an absolute beauty of an England goalkeeper kit.
Oh, it certainly is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one that I definitely love to add to the collection. Unfortunately, prices remain high, but I will, of course.
Yeah.
I'll keep monitoring the situation, shall we say.
Yeah, I think all those kits are great as well. I also think the Adidas kits of this tournament were pretty good. France had a really nice one. Romania, almost always good. The Dutch kit, always good. And then, of course, the Scotland kit. Is this the most iconic Scottish kit?
Yeah. It's a lovely kit, the tartan. I mean, obviously, bless Scotland, they've never gotten out of group stage. And I think if they got a bit further, it would have been a bit more iconic. But it was, it had that purple collar, didn't it? And then it had the tartan, big badge, because that was at the time, they're all about big badges, Umbro, which is a big staple of the time. But yeah, no, it was a great kit. Yeah, it was a lovely kit. Just a shame it couldn't, I'm sure they associate it with Colin Hendry going for a hot dog at Wembley while Gazza flings the ball over his head. But
that's the thing, is so many of these kits are tied to the
Yeah.
matches they were played in, like the grey kit for us, So
we mentioned the Croatia one, but I mean that was the first time I think we'd seen it as well. Like it's become a classic, and Stu said the latest one isn't great, but like the checkerboard look was very much stood them out, because you don't really see that kind of style. Especially at the time you didn't see it. The Spain one as well, that's I think the Spanish hold that in quite high regard. I'm not sure why, because again they didn't win anything in it, and we knocked them out when Nadal missed that penalty. But yeah, that's I think the current team I can see that. I think they were wearing it pre-match in one of their games, actually. I think I saw a couple of the players. There's like a training top, which is, I think Adidas brought it back, but that was quite a nice design.
yeah, that was cool. I remember that being a good one. And yeah, like you say, the Croatia kit, like checkerboards, that was, we were sort of, I guess it was pre-internet, and we were just, as kids, we were just like, hang on, there's checkerboards on a kit. You can't do that. It's just weird, isn't it? How it was like completely fresh to us, and now we're just used to it. Now we kick off when the check's too big, and it's not right.
Yeah.
One of my favourite random football memories, just to take it away from Euro 96 for a second, I'm sure you'll both know this well, is when Chelsea turned up to play a match at Coventry without their away kit, and were forced to wear Coventry's checkerboard away kit.
Yeah.
It was just red and black, and Coventry beat them soundly as well.
He's owner in it as well.
Yeah.
Kind of half confused to what he's doing wearing a Coventry City kit, but yeah, classic night. That's the sort of story you wouldn't get into it. Like the kit man forgot the kit. It's just it's the sort of story you don't hear in modern football. I love it.
That's what we like to deal in here. That's what we like to deal in.
Totally. Yeah.
But one thing I did want to mention is that I think this is the last tournament where we see players wearing random boot brands. So I saw a picture of the England team walking out in one of the matches of Euro 96, walking out of the tunnel in the latest edition of Mundial. I saw that picture a couple of days ago, and Stuart Pearce is wearing mitre boots. Gary Neville's wearing a pair of pony boots, and this is, I think, when you get to France '98, they were all black. Yes, that's quite right. Yeah. All the boots are black. And I think this is the last tournament really where you get that before everyone's wearing Adidas, Nike, Umbro, just sort of bigger brands like that, where players' individual boot brands sort of begin to die off a little bit. So yeah, a requiem for the pony football boot, if I could please, right at the very end.
I guess we also need to talk about the song, Three Lions. Like with the Italia 90 episode, we talked about how key the soundtrack to that tournament was, and how Nessun Dorma was such an integral part of that tournament. Is Three Lions the equivalent for England, do you think?
I mean, we're still singing it. I mean, it's nearly 30 years later. I'm not sure when Ian Brodie wrote that he thought we'd still be singing, we're going to be saying 30, 50, 60 years of hurt, wherever it's going to be. But I mean, when it came out, it was so different to any other England song that we'd had previously. And I think Frank Skinner's famously said that a lot of them were like, we're going to bring the trophy home, blah, blah. This kind of celebrated how mediocre England had been since 1966. But we always have that small little bit of hope, like any football fan at any team, at any level. When you go into a new season, when you go into a tournament, you always have that kind of, but what if kind of hope. And that played into it, and it was brilliant to get Skinner involved. Obviously, Fantasy Football League was at its absolute height at that point on a Friday night on BBC One, and eventually when he went to ITV. So that it was genius to get them involved. And I mean, it's a great song. Obviously, it's becoming a life of its own. You know, the term "It's Coming Home" has become a life of its own, and almost a kind of monkey on our backs a little bit, if I should say it. But it's ours, isn't it? I mean, the Germany team singing it when they're on that famous shot of them singing it on the balcony when they take the trophy home back to Germany was kind of a gut punch, but it's an absolute classic. And you know, when and if England decide to play well at 2024 or win the game properly, that's the first song, whatever pub, club, or you know, whatever you're in, that's the first thing. And as soon as the bars hit, we're not creative enough, we're not brilliant, you know, everyone is up singing it and stuff. I mean, personally, I always think World in Motion is a better song and it evokes more memories for me, maybe because that was my first introduction and the John Barnes rap, but it's an absolute classic, and it made this tournament.
It's coming home, it's coming home, it's coming, football's coming home, it's coming home, it's coming home, it's coming, football's coming home, it's coming home, it's coming home, it's coming, football's coming home, it's coming home, 3 lines on a shirt, it's coming, shoes remain still gleaming, it's coming home, 30 years of hurt, it's coming, never stopping dreaming, it's coming home, 3 lines on a shirt.
Yeah, I think it's a real goosebumps moment, isn't it, when the crowd starts singing it after the Scotland match, because it's like everyone is singing it. It's such a chorus. Yeah, World in Motion probably is a better actual song, something that you would actually put on at home in its own right, maybe, but it's not got the same sing-alongableness.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. In my local on Sunday night, when England have beaten Slovakia 5-0 and the tournament's up and running, I'm going to pop on the jukebox "We're in This Together" by Simply Red.
The official,
the official England song.
Yeah, I remember.
Lest we forget.
I remember the opening ceremony with Big Mick in the centre, and there was like St George's Dragon, I think they were trying to go for in the opening ceremony. I mean, opening ceremonies are just a ridiculous notion anyway. But
they're the worst. Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember Mick Hucknall being heavily involved as well. Yeah, I think did we have England's Irie as well, or was that 98? I always get a bit. Black Grape did an England song, an unofficial England song. I think that was 96. It's a great song. Google it if you haven't heard it. But it was kind of an unofficial England anthem. It might have been 98. I always get that one confused. But yeah, I mean, 3 line, nothing. That was the official one. They brought it back for 98, even though the FA had an official one with Echo and the Bunnymen and the Spice Girls and all that lot. But no one's ever beaten it. I mean, I was saying this the other day, like what's happened to England songs? Like we don't have them anymore. What is it, because 3 lines can't be beaten? I think the last time I remember was when Dizzy Rascal and James Corden tried to, basically they killed off the football song for us all.
I think they did. Yeah.
I can't even remember. They covered something. It was a terrible cover version.
Was it Shout by Tears for Fears?
Yes. Yeah. It was Shout. Oh, it was terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, Mick Hucknall looms large over this podcast for a number of different reasons. So it's good to mention him again here. But yeah, We're in This Together actually reached number 11 in the charts in summer '96. But as we say, completely upstaged by 3 lines. I had a listen to the song, and I had a look at the video. Appearances by Euro '96's youngest player and his brother in the video. Gary and Phil make an appearance. And they are on a settee in full kit, playing the official Euro '96
game,
video game
as well.
Yeah, it's rubbish, isn't it? Yeah, I dug out the Saturn recently and tried to play it, but it's absolutely impossible. But the song itself is it's a bit maudlin, really.
We're in this together.
plenty in mind of the Scottish song from '98, "Don't Come Home Too Soon" by Telemetry. That was more of the feel that it gave me. Speaking of Scotland, Scotland's own effort, "Purple Heather" by the aforementioned Rod Stewart, made it to number 16 at the same time. And this is a video that is complete with my absolute favourite thing about a football songs video, which is the entire squad around some microphones, holding headphones like this, looking like they do not want to be there and they would rather be anywhere else.
That is the hallmark of a football song. That's what you need. If anything, Three Lions ruined that, because I don't. What they had the players recreating. I remember Stone was Nobby Styles in one of the skits. Because when the lyrics talk about when Lineker scored, blah blah blah, Bobby belting the ball and all that. But yeah, they didn't have that classic. It's the same with FA Cup songs. Like they died off, and I would love to bring them back, because it's like, it's a bit of let's not take this as seriously as we probably should. Fun of football, but they have definitely died off. And thanks to, I suppose England wise, you can't beat. People are always going to sing Three Lions. That's the problem. Even Ant and Dec tried at one point, but no one sings On the Ball in the terraces, do they?
Oh, imagine that. I'm just changed, like in an alternate universe. After that Scotland match, everyone's singing On the Ball. Terrifying.
What was that bit they say? Blah blah to Heskey and go. Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah. Heskey makes it 5 or something like that, isn't it? Yeah. Bloody awful.
I saw it on my Twitter timeline a few weeks ago. I was like, oh my god, I'd forgotten about this video.
I tell you what, in World Cup 26, us three, Stu, you get your guitar out. We'll put something together. I'll put my headphones on like this, and I'll hold it like this, and we'll put something together. Great. We'll bring them back.
I did once really weirdly I think I'd had a few Bacardi Breezes probably at the time. Do you know the song "Call Me Al" with Chevy Chase is in?
Yeah.
I came up with some England song that was to that, because it was quite catchy. So maybe I'll try and rehash that for 2026.
Call Me Alan Shearer.
Yeah, I can't remember what the lyrics were, but so basically, so England fans would go do 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 into some sort of Englandness. But yeah, I can't remember what it was.
Oh yes, please.
That's more 80s than 90s, but yeah.
And then in the video, if we could get the current squad to be taking shots against me, we'll get Caution Town's ground. We'll hire that out, and we'll get them down there. Perfect.
One final thing on Three Lions is it's terrifying to think that they were talking about 30 years of hurt, which was the gap between 96 and 66, and we're 2 years away from it being 30 years away from Euro 96. That doesn't seem right, does it?
No, it does not. Bloody win the thing so we can stop singing it.
Right, so what is the legacy then? What's the legacy of Euro 96?
Well, I think Ash might have covered it actually right at the very top. I think he might have said everything that I was planning to say about this. I think it's the most talked about summer of the 90s for a number of reasons, mainly for the culture as well as the football. As we said, Britpop was on an absolute high. We've got this tournament in England in a baking summer with one of the best England teams. It turned out that we'd had for many years. There was a bit of hope around the corner politically with New Labour as well, and that was just about to reach its crescendo as well. The Top of the Pops repeats on BBC 4 have just reached 1996. We're in about April 96 at the moment, so this is all just about to come over on the BBC 4 repeats. And like we said at the very beginning, if there was a time in the 90s to revisit, like a 4-week period or a 2-week period, I think that Euro 96 would be it. The summer of 96 would be it. And I think that's all there is to say, really.
Yeah, it's true. There's a great BBC drama they did a couple of years later with Neil Morrissey called My Summer with Des. Which is set at Euro 96, and if you watch, it's done really well because it's on YouTube. I've got it on VHS somewhere, but I think you can watch it on YouTube. And they've done really well to set the set. It's a bit of a bizarre story and a bit fanciful, but they've managed to kind of get that feeling into it. It's a really, really like unknown drama, but I remember it being out in 98. I think they did it in the build to the World Cup, but it's set at Euro 96 and it goes through all the games and Shearer's goal drought and the belief. That's what I think it was as well, because that was we believed in 1990, but this felt like we were going to win it. And every single step of the way, that hope got bigger. And because it was in our country and the song, it all felt like it was all falling. It was meant to be. And then, you know, it wasn't in the end. And Germany won and ruined everything. But it was, you're right, Stu. It was, if you could just bottle up that feeling and that of the zeitgeist of that summer. It was just, it was. You had to. I always say, if you didn't live it, it's really hard to explain. And England's gone further since. Like, you think of Euro 2020 or 21, whatever you want to call it. Like, we got to the final, but I still think people will look back on this team and this run as a more, especially had the COVID factor as well in 2020. But it wasn't the same vibe. Even 2018 when Southgate kind of come back and gave that vibe. It still wasn't 1996, and I think that's the legacy of just being the height of 19s-ness.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously we are the age we are. We watch it at a very formative time in our lives, but I can't really imagine teenagers of the present day watching the Euro 2021 final and seeing it in the same way. Because I mean, there was a lot of unpleasantness, obviously, after that penalty shootout and with the match and people trying to get into the stadium. That you just didn't get that with Euro 96. It was all positive on the surface, at least. So I think, the legacy would be that positivity. You can never take that away. Like, nothing can taint that now. It's always going to be this idyllic moment frozen in time. And it was a triumphant homecoming. I think up there with Italian 90, it's the most evocative. Helped thanks in big part to Three Lions. It's the most evocative tournament of my life, and it probably always will be. And part of me thinks, I'm kind of glad we lost to Germany on penalties, because that element of bittersweetness is part of being an England fan, isn't it? And it makes it almost the perfect tournament for your memories, because you had all the positives, but it ends on that sad, emotional note. And I kind of think it's good, and it keeps us hoping. And maybe when we do finally win a tournament, I don't know, we'll all just lose interest or something. I don't know. I think that's just a big part of it.
I always remember the BBC finished that night at Wembley when we lost to Germany, and I've tried to find this clip online. It's one of those few things I've never been able to find and to put it on social. But their sign-out song, where they do the montage at the end of was "Walk Away" by Cast, which is not only an absolute brilliant song, but just summed up the emotion, because it's like a rare Britpop ballad anyway, and it was perfect for the time. And we were walking away from the tournament, and had these images of going through the peer celebration, the Gaza goal, the almost, because people forget about the Spain game. We were terrible. We should have lost that game. We didn't actually play that well against Spain. We were very lucky, and they had a goal ruled out for offside that would have knocked us out of the tournament eventually. But we that was the only game we didn't play particularly well in, but it just built up, and they put it all together in this sort of heartbreaking montage at the end, but at the same time almost beautiful, because it summed up such a moment in time that we're all in it together. We're in it together, as Mick Hucknall sang of the tournament.
Well, that's going to be the first thing I check out on YouTube when we finish this record, because I do love that song. It sounds perfect. So I need to watch that. I would also recommend the Summer Football Came Home, which was an ITV documentary from a few years ago now. I think that's all on YouTube. That's a really good documentary about the tournament. Sort of sums up the feelings around it, I think. Right. Well, Ash, we cannot thank you enough for coming on again. You are the absolute best man for the job when it comes to talking about football tournaments of the 90s.
I'll be here when you need Euro 92, when you run out of episodes and we want to Euro 92.
Yeah, we're going to have to do it sooner or later. If nothing else, it'll be an education for us. So, we'll do it. And you know that I'm absolutely gagging to do the World Cup 94 episode, because that's my favourite tournament. I know it's your favourite as well. But is there anything you want to plug, Ash? Where can the listeners find you? What are you up to these days?
I mean, find me on, what's it, X these days, the kids call it, on Ash UK on Instagram as well. Doing the usual with the Alive and Kicking is going to be back for the new season. We've had a bit of a break this year. Just we got to a point where I feel like we weren't giving the best episodes because there were lots of things in the way. So we've taken a break. kind of rehashed a few things. Hopefully we'll be back for the start of next season. So yeah, look out for that on your timeline. The only thing I would say, closing Euro 96 book as well, must not forget the Corinthian figures, because they were born for Euro 96. So everyone who collected them, they're behind me now. They were the first ever set of Corinthian football figures. So if you remember the little figures with the massive heads, the first set was out in 95 as a prelude to Euro 96. So there are some random players in that, including John Solarco, who didn't quite make the final Euro 96 squad, or David Unsworth, who's in that set. But yeah, that's something else to mention. But yeah, great to be on, guys. Yeah, if you ever need tournament talking or anything in the 90s, I'm here at your disposal.
Well, thanks again to Ash for coming on and joining us for another chat about a great football tournament. That's 2 in a row he's done with us now. And, well, what can you say? Euro 96, one of the best of all time, isn't it, Stu?
Let's face it, any time that we get to chat about Euro 96 at length is always going to be good, isn't it? And Ash is the perfect person to have on to discuss that. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Everything we spoke about, all of the different aspects of the tournament. And it's just one of those ones that you never get tired of looking back on, is it? Despite all the heartbreak and everything else that went on around it. Yeah, a golden summer, a golden time.
Exactly. If you have any thoughts on Euro 96, any personal memories or anecdotes that you want to send to us, please, we would love to hear from you. So go to our link tree where you can find all of our links to our relevant social medias, and you can get in touch in all those channels. And for the next episode, Stu, we think we've got another guest coming back on, another return guest at that. Brother and legend of the pod, Adam, will hopefully be joining us to talk about the food of the 90s. And we'll be picking our dream day's worth of food and snacks, won't we, Stu?
Very much looking forward to that, yeah. And if Adam wants to bring along our winnings from the Jimmy's Cricket's Euro sweepstake as well, while he's at it, then that'll be perfect.
But until then, that is us done for today. It's goodbye from me. I'm just off to give Yuri Geller a call and see if he's available for the Slovakia match on Sunday.
And it's goodbye from me. I'm just off to watch the We're In This Together video again, because it is better than 3 lines. And we love you, Mick.
The ghost of Mick lives. Goodbye.
Ta-ta.